I was 52 the year it happened, the age when the world starts treating you like furniture, present, functional, but nobody really notices anymore. They called it early retirement like it was some kind of prize. But I knew the truth. In the force, once you cross 50, you become the person blocking the next generation's path. 20 years of service, 20 years in uniform. All I got when I walked out was a cold handshake and a single line, "Thank you for your dedication, ma'am." I thought I'd gotten used to being underestimated, until the phone rang at 2:47 in the morning. The kind of sound that cuts through sleep like a blade through silk. I wasn't on base that night, hadn't been for 6 months. I just finished unpacking the last box in my new rental, a modest 2-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood where nobody knew Captain Rachel Morgan used to run investigations that made grown men sweat. The phone screen lit up the ceiling. Emma, my sister. The last time she called this late, our father had been in the ICU with his second stroke. My stomach dropped before I even swiped to answer. "Rachel," her voice cracked like ice splitting under weight. "I'm at the police station." That woke me faster than any drill sergeant ever had. "What? Why? What happened?" "He hit me again, Rachel." "But he's telling them I attacked him." "They believe him. They think I'm crazy." Her breathing came in short, broken gasps. The kind you make when you're trying not to collapse entirely. "Stay where you are. Don't say a word to anyone until I get there." "I'm scared," she whispered. "They're looking at me like I'm the criminal." The line cut out. No goodbye, no click, just dead silence. I grabbed my jacket and keys and was out the door in under a minute. The roads were empty at that hour. The kind of empty that feels wrong, like even the streetlights don't want to witness what's coming. The drive to Fairhaven took an hour and a half. I hit every red light like the universe was testing my patience, timing how long I could hold myself together before the seams started showing. I couldn't stop thinking about Emma. She was 27, smart, steady, worked part-time at the library shelving books and running story hours for kids who adored her. Not the type to lose control. Her husband, Marcus Hart, was a different story. Smooth talker, owned a local construction business, the kind of man who smiled for cameras but never meant it. I'd met plenty like him in the service, men who knew exactly how to hide the damage they caused. When I pulled into the station lot, fluorescent lights made the pavement shine like wet glass. Inside, the air smelled like burnt coffee and industrial floor polish. A young officer at the desk glanced up, clearly half asleep. His nameplate read Keller. "I'm here for Emma Morgan Hart," I said. Keeping my voice level. He hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. "Family. Sister, Rachel Morgan, former captain, military police." Something shifted in his face. Not respect, doubt. His posture straightened, but his eyes narrowed like I'd just claimed to be someone important who couldn't possibly matter anymore. "Former," he repeated slowly, letting the word hang between us. "Means you don't have any authority here, ma'am." "Ma'am." The word landed like a slap. I'd spent 2 decades earning rank, leading investigations, commanding respect from soldiers who outweighed me by 80 pounds and outranked me in ego. And here was a kid barely old enough to rent a car, reminding me that all of it meant nothing now. "I'm not here as an officer," I said quietly. "I'm here as her sister." He tapped a few keys without looking at me. "She's in holding. The other party's giving a statement." "The other party?" I repeated, letting each word drop like a stone. "You mean the man who hit her?" He shifted on his feet, uncomfortable, but not enough to change course. "Ma'am, we're still collecting information." "Then collect it faster." He cleared his throat and led me down the hall. The place was half lit, humming with cheap fluorescent bulbs that flickered every few feet. I caught glimpses of my reflection in the windows we passed. Tired eyes, tight jaw, the look of someone trying very hard not to break something. We stopped outside a holding room. Through the glass I saw her. Emma sat on a metal bench, one wrist zip-tied to a rail. Her navy hoodie, the one she'd stolen from my closet last summer, was torn at the collar, stained dark in patches I recognized as dried blood. Her left cheek was swollen, purple bleeding into red, and there was a gash above her eyebrow that nobody had bothered to clean properly. Marcus stood on the other side of the room. Tailored coat, a small cut on his lip, fake concern written all over his face. He was talking to another officer, gesturing with slow, deliberate movements, like he was rehearsing a story he'd practiced for years. Emma looked up and saw me. Her eyes filled fast, and she tried to stand, but the zip tie jerked her back down. "What the hell is this?" I snapped, turning to Keller. "Why is she restrained?" He froze, mouth opening and closing like he'd lost the script. "Protocol, ma'am, domestic disturbances." "She's the one who called for help." My voice bounced off the walls, sharper than I intended. "You can take that thing off her right now." Keller hesitated. "I need clearance from—" A female officer down the hall stepped forward. "I'll handle it." She pulled out a small blade and sliced the tie clean. The plastic fell away with a soft snap. "Ramirez," she said quietly, offering a nod that almost felt like respect. Emma rubbed her wrist, red marks circling the skin like a bracelet, then stood and walked straight into my arms. Her body shook like she'd been holding everything together by sheer force of will and had finally run out of strength. "He said I attacked him," she whispered against my shoulder. "He dragged me into the kitchen, and when I tried to leave, he slammed my head into the counter. I never touched a knife, Rachel. I swear I never—" "Did anyone check her injuries?" I asked, cutting through the haze of her panic. Keller looked cornered. "She's being processed, ma'am. Medical's on the way." "Processing victims now? That a new policy?" Ramirez glanced at me, something unspoken passing between us. "I'll get a medic." I sat Emma down and looked her over properly. Split lip, bruises on both arms, finger marks on her neck. She smelled faintly of copper and cheap disinfectant, the kind hospitals use when they're trying to scrub away evidence without really caring about the person underneath. My jaw clenched hard enough to ache. Across the room, Marcus leaned against the counter, watching us. When our eyes met, he smiled. Not big, just that smug little curve that said he thought he'd already won. "Captain Morgan," he said smoothly, as if my rank was a joke he was in on. "Your sister gets emotional sometimes. You know how she can be." "Careful," I said, voice flat. He kept talking like he couldn't hear me. "She came at me with a knife. I defended myself. Checked my face, my arm, scratches everywhere. I didn't want to call the police, but she was hysterical." Hysterical. I repeated the word slowly, tasting how much I hated it. "That's convenient." Emma's eyes filled again. "He's lying. He grabbed me by the hair, Rachel. I was just trying to get away." Keller looked between them, clearly out of his depth. His clipboard trembled in his hands. "Mr. Hart, we'll need you to sit down, sir." Marcus chuckled, the sound easy and practiced. "No need for that, officer. We're all calm here." That's when another voice broke in. Carter, a younger cop from the front desk. He was pale, holding a phone like it might explode. "Captain Morgan," he said quietly, eyes darting to Marcus. "Your sister's 911 call recorded everything. Audio only, but it doesn't match his story." Marcus's head turned fast. "That could be edited. You can fake anything now, AI apps, right?" Carter ignored him. "The timestamp's clean. She called at 11:47 p.m. You can hear him yelling in the background, clear as day." For the first time, Marcus didn't have an answer. His jaw tightened, knuckles going white against the counter's edge. Ramirez looked at Keller. "We should detain him." Keller hesitated again. He was young, maybe new, still clinging to whatever training manual said not to anger the well-dressed guy with connections. I took one step closer to Marcus, close enough to see the vein pulsing in his temple. "You like control, don't you? You think money makes you untouchable?" He stared at me, expression hardening. "Here's the thing," I continued, voice dropping to something colder. "You just laid hands on a soldier's family." Ramirez cuffed him before he could respond. The smirk dropped. His wrists locked behind him with a metallic click that echoed through the room. Emma reached for me. "He's going to get out, isn't he?" "Not tonight," I said, "and not if I have anything to do with it." While they led him down the hall, he glanced back once, eyes burning with something colder than hate. "You think this changes anything?" he muttered. I didn't answer. I just held my sister close, feeling her shake against me, while the sound of metal doors echoed behind us. The medic finally arrived, muttering about delayed calls and missing paperwork. Ramirez shot Keller a look that could cut glass. "You skipped protocol, rookie." He swallowed. "Yes, ma'am." I stayed with Emma through the exam, watching every move. She barely spoke, just stared at the floor while they photographed bruises and logged injuries. When they asked for next of kin, she looked up at me. "Rachel," she said softly, "I thought if I stayed quiet, he'd stop." "He never would have," I said. "Men like that don't stop. They just get smarter about hiding it." Outside, the parking lot was still empty, that strange pre-dawn quiet that hums in your ears. I walked her to my truck, wrapped her in my jacket, and started the engine. The headlights caught the edge of the police building, stark and bright, like nothing had happened there at all. Emma stared out the window, voice barely a whisper. They didn't believe me until you came. I didn't answer. There was too much to think about. Too many faces in that station who'd looked right at her and seen a problem instead of a victim. As we pulled onto the main road, the radio crackled with static, then went silent. Emma closed her eyes, and for a few seconds, I let myself believe that getting her out of there was enough. But it wasn't. It was just the start. 24 hours later, Keller called me. His voice sounded different, strained, like he'd been running and couldn't catch his breath. Captain Morgan, there's something wrong. I was in the middle of making coffee, the kind of mindless task you do when your brain won't shut off. I set the pot down. What is it? The audio file from the 911 call. It's gone. Deleted from the system. The room went very still. What do you mean deleted? It was marked as a duplicate and wiped. I checked the log myself. It came from Detective Harlan's account. Detective Harland. I didn't know the name, but I knew the type. Mid-level career cop. Probably comfortable enough to look the other way if the price was right. Who cleared it? I asked, though I already knew the answer wouldn't be simple. His credentials, but I don't think he did it himself. The timestamp doesn't match his shift, so someone used his login. Or he let them. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight settle in. This wasn't just a domestic violence case anymore. This was something planned, something organized. Thanks for the heads up, Keller. Captain, I could get suspended for telling you this. Yeah, I said, welcome to the club. I spent the rest of the morning calling in favors. Old contacts from the service, a friend who worked in legal, a retired cop who now ran a security consulting firm. Everyone said the same thing. If the wrong person wanted a case buried, it would vanish fast, especially in a small town where Marcus's company paid for the annual charity gala and had his name on half the community center plaques. At noon, Emma's phone rang again. Unknown number. She stared at it, then handed it to me without a word. I answered. Silence for a second. Then Marcus's voice, calm and smug. Captain Morgan, you're making a mistake getting involved. This is between me and my wife. She's not your wife anymore. He chuckled, the sound oily. That's not what the records say, and soon enough, everyone will see who she really is. You should tell her to stop playing the victim before things get worse. I hung up. I didn't trust myself to keep my tone professional. Emma was shaking again. He won't stop, Rachel. Yes, he will, I said. One way or another. I spent the next few hours documenting everything. Screenshots, call logs, photos of her injuries. I uploaded copies to a cloud drive and sent them to my contact at the district attorney's office, Mariah Jacobs. She was sharp, tough, allergic to nonsense. If anyone could cut through red tape, it was her. By late afternoon, she called back. I got the files, she said, her tone careful. And yeah, this report is garbage. I'll push for a formal review, but you should prepare for backlash. Marcus Hart's name carries weight around here. I don't care about his name. I know, but the people signing warrants do. That night, I drove Emma to my friend's house on the outskirts of town. A safe place, no neighbors, security cameras on every corner. She didn't want to stay, but she didn't argue either. When I got back to my house, there was a car parked across the street. Windows tinted, engine idling. It didn't move when I pulled in, didn't move when I turned off my headlights. After 5 minutes, it finally rolled away. The next morning, Keller showed up again. He looked worse. Dark circles, jittery. Captain, he said, something weird's going on. I already knew, but I let him say it. The audio file from the 911 call. It's completely gone. Not just deleted, erased from backup servers too. Someone went deep. Who has that level of access? He hesitated. Detective Harland. Maybe a couple others in admin, but it takes authorization. Or money. He nodded slowly. What do you need from me? I asked. I can get you into the evidence database, just long enough to check timestamps, pull metadata. But if I get caught, you won't. I'll make sure of it. By noon, we had our first solid lead. The building security system showed Marcus dragging Emma by the arm at 11:42 p.m., 5 minutes before her 911 call. The lights went out at 11:43. Someone had flipped the breaker. Emma ran out bleeding at 11:45. Keller stared at the screen. That's enough to reopen it. Not yet, I told him. We need to make it airtight. He's rich, connected, and desperate. If we move too soon, he'll spin it again. He nodded slowly. So what now? Now, I said, grabbing my keys. We go get the rest. The apartment building looked smaller in daylight. Ordinary, even. The kind of beige complex that blended into every other street in Fairhaven. But when you've spent years investigating crime scenes, you stop seeing what's normal. You start seeing what doesn't fit. The building super, a guy named Patel, opened the door before I even knocked. He looked nervous, like he already knew why I was there. "Captain Morgan, right? The police were here last night." "Yeah," I said. "And they missed things." He scratched his head. "I cleaned the hall this morning, but I didn't touch apartment 3C. Figured it was still evidence." "Good instinct. I just need to look around. You can stay if it makes you feel better." He followed me up the stairs, shoes squeaking on linoleum. The hallway smelled faintly of bleach. A cracked light flickered above the door. Patel unlocked it. The apartment was quiet, too clean. Someone had tried to scrub the kitchen counter, but they'd done a lazy job. Dried streaks of reddish-brown still clung to the grout between tiles. I crouched down and ran a gloved hand along the baseboard. Dust, crumbs, and a tiny sliver of plastic. I held it up to the light. "Was this here before?" I asked. Patel shook his head. "No, ma'am. I mopped last night after the sirens left. Didn't see that then." I bagged it in a sandwich bag from my pocket. It was a piece of a phone case, cracked, with part of a logo still visible. "You got hallway cameras?" He nodded. "Two. One facing the stairs, one over the laundry room door, both backed up on a local drive in my office." We went downstairs. The office smelled like coffee and carpet cleaner. Patel sat at his desk, typing in a password, muttering under his breath. I knew that guy was trouble, always acting like he owned the place. The footage loaded, grainy but clear enough. Timestamp, 11:42 p.m. Marcus's hand gripping Emma's arm, pulling her toward the door. She tried to pull away. He yanked harder. A light overhead flickered. Then everything went black. "Breakers in the basement," Patel murmured. "Tenants don't have access. Only me." "Then he planned it," I said quietly. He knew exactly where to hit. The footage jumped forward. At 11:45, the lights came back on. Emma stumbled into the hallway, hoodie half off her shoulder, blood visible even on the low-res camera. She ran down the stairs. 30 seconds later, Marcus walked out, calm, coat over his arm. He glanced up at the hallway camera, then went the opposite direction. That was enough to prove she wasn't lying, but I needed more than proof. I needed to crush every chance he had to twist the story. I asked Patel for a copy. He burned it to a flash drive, hands trembling like he didn't want any part of what came next. "If anyone asks," I said, "you gave this to Officer Keller, understand?" He nodded too quickly. "Understood." Back in my truck, I called Keller. "I've got the footage, it's solid." He whistled low. "That's big, but if it didn't go through the official evidence chain, the DA might toss it. Then we make it official. You logged it this morning, remember?" He hesitated, then sighed. "Right, logged it this morning." "Good. We're learning." I sent the file to Mariah Jacobs with a note. "Matches 911 timeline. Timestamp confirms sequence." 5 minutes later, she called. "If this is legit, it flips everything. But I'll need to move quietly. The department's already defensive about the case." "Defensive or corrupt?" I asked. She paused. "Let's just say they're careful about who they call a liar." While I was still on the phone, Emma texted. "Mom called. She's coming back from Chicago. Says Marcus told her I'm unstable." Perfect. He was already rewriting history, pulling in allies before we could build a defense. When I got home, Emma was pacing in the kitchen, eyes red but dry. "He's calling everyone. Mom, my boss, even the landlord, telling them I'm crazy." "He's scared," I said. "That's good. Fear makes people sloppy." "He's going to ruin me. Not if I get there first." She looked at me like she wanted to believe it but didn't know how. "Rachel, do you think people ever really change?" "Some do," I said. "Most just get better at pretending." Before I could say more, someone knocked on the door. It was Ramirez, off duty but still carrying that "don't mess with me" energy. She stepped inside and handed me a brown envelope. "This never came from me," she said. I opened it. Inside were printed emails between someone with the initials JH and EC, Detective John Harland and EC. The subject line read, "Appreciate your discretion." My pulse climbed. "He's bribing him or blackmailing." "Either way," Ramirez said, turning to leave, "you didn't hear it from me. You're walking a fine line here, Rachel. One wrong move and they'll call you the aggressor next." "Then I guess I'll make sure my moves count." After she left, I sat at the table, staring at the envelope. Emma was across from me, hugging her knees. "What now?" she asked. "We build the case ourselves," I said, "piece by piece. We don't give them a single gap to exploit." She hesitated. "You sound like you're back on duty." "Maybe I am." That night, I barely slept. I spent hours listening to the 911 recording Keller had managed to pull from a backup drive buried deep in the system. You could hear everything. The crash, the yelling, Emma's voice saying clearly, "He's hurting me." Then a thud, and silence. My sister's breathing turned into sobs. It was the kind of thing that stuck with you, like shrapnel lodged in bone. The next morning, I dropped Emma off at therapy. She'd resisted the idea at first, but I didn't give her a choice. "You're not weak," I told her. "You're rebuilding." While she was inside, I stopped by the precinct again. Keller was at his desk, typing fast. When he saw me, he minimized his screen like a guilty kid. "What are you working on?" I asked. "Figure out," he sighed. "Cross-referencing Marcus Hart's business accounts. I found something weird." He pulled up the data. Payments to a consulting firm, Lang & Associates, recurring monthly, $7,500 each. "Recognize the name?" he asked. I froze. Lang. That name hadn't crossed my radar in 15 years. Tommy Trigger Lang. I'd arrested his brother for armed robbery back when I was still a lieutenant. Same family, same blood. "Marcus's company's been wiring the money for months," Keller said. "What's the connection?" I felt my chest tighten. "Tommy Lang," I said slowly. "I arrested him 15 years ago, armed robbery, assault. He's still locked up." Keller's eyes widened. "You think this is payback?" "I think it's something worse," I said. "I think it's strategy." Before he could reply, Harland walked out of his office. He stopped when he saw me, a fake smile already in place. "Captain Morgan," he said, "still playing detective?" "Just visiting," I replied evenly. "Careful, people might think you're interfering with an investigation. Only if they forget who started it." He laughed under his breath. "Tell your sister to get a lawyer. She's going to need one." I watched him walk away, and for the first time, I knew exactly what kind of fight I was in. This wasn't about one man's temper. It was about a network, a system built to protect power and punish whoever dared to challenge it. And I wasn't about to let it win. I didn't drive straight home that night. My head was too full, hands too tight on the wheel. Instead, I parked outside an old diner off Route 61, the kind of place that smelled like burnt coffee and cigarettes no one admitted to smoking inside. I ordered black coffee and sat in the back booth, laptop open, chasing the name Lang & Associates through every database I could access without leaving fingerprints. 10 minutes in, I hit gold, or rot, depending on how you looked at it. Lang & Associates wasn't a consulting firm. It was a shell company registered under a string of fake addresses in Ohio, Nevada, and Virginia. And one of its founding names, buried in the corporate paperwork, was Thomas Lang, also known as Tommy Trigger Lang, the same man I'd helped put away for armed robbery 15 years ago. The same man whose younger brother was now my sister's husband. I leaned back, staring at the screen. The air felt heavier, like gravity had doubled. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a long play. Revenge. I called Keller. He picked up on the second ring, voice groggy. "Captain? You sitting down?" "I am now." Lang & Associates is fake. It's Tommy Lang's operation. Marcus has been funneling money through it for years. He swore under his breath. "Jesus, you think it's tied to you?" "I don't think." "I know. What do we do?" "We don't do anything," I said. "Not yet. We watch, we gather, then we hit them where it hurts." After I hung up, I opened a new folder on my drive. Operation Lang, Old Habits Die Hard. I cross-referenced public records, court logs, old arrest warrants. Tommy Lang had filed for parole twice, denied both times. But there was something new. Letters sent from prison to a Fairhaven address. The recipient, Marcus Hart. The first one dated back 3 years, the year Marcus married my sister. That realization hit like a punch to the ribs. By the time I got home, the sun was clawing up over the trees. Emma was in the kitchen, barefoot, hair tied up, holding a mug like it was keeping her grounded. "You didn't sleep again," she said quietly. "Neither did you." She tried to smile, failed. "Mom called again. She's confused. Marcus told her you're using me to get revenge on him, that I'm unstable. She asked if you've been taking your meds. I laughed, but it came out bitter. He's gaslighting both of you, classic tactic. Undermine the witness, then rewrite the story. Emma looked down. It's working. She doesn't believe me. Then we don't convince her, I said. We prove it. I opened my laptop and showed her the files. Marcus's payments, the connection to Tommy Lang, the letters from prison. Marcus has been working with Tommy Lang, I said carefully. That's why he targeted you. She blinked. I don't understand. 15 years ago, I arrested Tommy for armed robbery. His brother sat in the courtroom and swore he'd get even. I thought he was just mouthing off. I was wrong. Emma's face went pale. So Marcus married me to get back at you? Partly. Maybe he saw a chance for money, control both. But make no mistake, this was personal from day one. She sat down hard. He ruined my life because of you. The word stung, but she caught herself immediately. No, I didn't mean it like that. How do you live with that kind of hate for 15 years? Some people build their lives around it, I said. Before we could say anything else, there was a knock at the door. Ramirez again, this time in plain clothes, face serious. You two might want to sit down, she said. What is it? Harlan's under internal review. Someone leaked his emails with Marcus to internal affairs. I raised an eyebrow. Someone? She smiled faintly. Anonymous tip. Don't ask questions. Sis question. What happens now? Internal affairs froze his access to the system, but they'll need more to bring him down. They're watching him. And they're watching you. So if I'm planning to go cowboy on this, I should keep it clean. I always do, I said. Sure you do. Before she left, she handed me a small USB drive. Security footage from City Hall parking, last week. Marcus met with a guy driving a county-issue sedan. Thought you'd find that interesting. When she was gone, I plugged it into the laptop. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Marcus shaking hands with someone tall, bald, wearing a suit. I zoomed in on the license plate. County government plate, registered to Brian Reed, assistant to the district clerk. Why would a clerk meet with him? Emma asked. Good. To make files disappear, I said. I texted Keller. Pull everything on Brian Reed. Financials, communications, side gigs. Within an hour, he replied. He's been approving fake invoices from Lang & Associates. Payments routed to Marcus's business accounts. So it wasn't just corruption. It was an entire chain. Money laundering, evidence tampering, maybe even obstruction. All of it built on the idea that no one would look close enough to care. But I was looking, and I wasn't going to stop. If I couldn't use the badge, I'd use the brain. 20 years in military police had taught me one thing above all else. The person who wins isn't the strongest. It's the one who prepares best. I spent the week after discovering Marcus's connection to Tommy Lang doing what I did best. Building a case from the ground up, quietly, methodically, like assembling a weapon in the dark. No one needed to know what I was doing until it was too late for them to stop it. Ramirez came by on a Tuesday afternoon. She'd traded her uniform for jeans and a leather jacket, but she still moved like a cop, alert, aware, ready. You're not backing down, are you? She asked, settling into the chair across from me. Would you? She smiled, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. Hell no. I've seen too many women get buried by the system because they trusted it to protect them. She paused. I'll help. Off the books. You could lose your pension. I could, but I've been a sergeant for 12 years watching good cops get punished for doing the right thing while bad ones get promotions for keeping quiet. Maybe it's time someone remembers what the badge is supposed to mean. That's how the team started. Small, careful. People who'd seen enough corruption to hate it, but were still naive enough to think they could fight it. Keller was next. He showed up at my door that evening, nervous energy crackling off him like static. I've been thinking about what you said, about being part of the problem or part of the solution. And I want to help. For real. Not just feeding you information and pretending I don't know what you're doing with it. I studied him, 26 years old, fresh idealism still clinging to him like cologne. The kind of cop who'd either burn out in 5 years or become exactly what the department needed. You understand what you're risking? I asked. Your career, your reputation. They'll call you a traitor. Better that than whatever they'll call me if I stay quiet. I nodded. Then we do this smart. No cowboy moves, no shortcuts. Everything by the book, just not their book. He grinned, some of the tension easing from his shoulders. Whose book then? Mine. The next morning, I contacted Mariah Jacobs at the district attorney's office. We met at a coffee shop 2 towns over, the kind of place where nobody knew us and nobody cared. Mariah was 45, sharp as broken glass, with a reputation for taking cases other prosecutors considered career suicide. She'd built her name on corruption trials, going after dirty cops and crooked politicians with the kind of single-minded focus that made people either love her or hate her. There was no middle ground. "I got your files," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. "The evidence is solid, but you know what happens if we push this, right? Every cop on Marcus's payroll will turn their backs. He'll spin it as a vendetta, vengeful ex-military sister with a grudge. I can live with that. Can they live with perjury charges?" She sighed, pulling out a yellow legal pad covered in notes. "I'll file the motion quietly. But once this leaks, and it will leak, it's out of my hands. The department will close ranks. You'll be painted as obsessed, unstable. They'll dig into your service record looking for anything they can use against you." "Let them dig. I've got nothing to hide." "Everyone's got something, Rachel. You just haven't found yours yet." I met her eyes across the table. "Then I guess we better move fast." That afternoon, Keller and I drove out to a storage facility on the edge of town. The kind of place where people kept things they didn't want found. Old furniture, forgotten memories, evidence of crimes they hoped would stay buried. Trevor Hollis had given me the address along with the key. Brian Reed's assistant, underpaid and overlooked, the type of person who sees everything because nobody thinks he's worth noticing. We'd met at a gas station off Highway 47. Trevor looked like he hadn't slept in days, eyes darting to every car that passed. "I can't talk long. Reed's already paranoid." "You have something for us?" He slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a small key and a USB drive. "Storage locker downtown, Unit A17. Reed keeps paper copies of everything. Says digital trails are too risky." He swallowed hard. "There's also recordings, meetings between Reed and Marcus. They thought I wasn't listening, but I was. I always was." I pocketed the envelope. "You'll be safe. We'll make sure of it." He gave a bitter laugh. "Nobody's safe here. Not really." Now, standing in front of Unit A17, I understood what he meant. The lock turned with a soft click. Inside were 3 cardboard boxes, a leather briefcase, and a folder marked contracts. Keller stood watch while I went through everything. Bank transfers, notarized agreements, voice memos labeled by date. One file stood out, meeting June 3rd. I played it through my headphones right there, sitting on the concrete floor. Harlan's voice came first, tight with impatience. "You promised I'd get half up front," Marcus replied, smooth as oil. "You'll get it when the case disappears. No arrest, no leaks, you understand?" Reed cut in, his voice higher, eager. "She's unstable. It's easy. We paint her as delusional. The DA will fold." Then Marcus again, laughing. "And when her sister steps in, we call it retaliation. She's still wearing the badge, or was. Nobody will touch her after that. They'll think she's just another washed-up soldier playing hero." The recording stopped. I sat there staring at the gray wall, feeling my pulse in my fingertips. When I came back outside, Keller saw my face. "That bad?" "Worse. They planned the whole thing, every step." He shook his head slowly. "If we drop that on the DA's desk, it's over." "No, if we drop it now, it disappears like everything else. We leak it, make it news, then they can't bury it." "You sure about that?" I'd never been sure of anything in my life. I spent the next day burning copies of the files. One for Ramirez, one for Jacobs, one uploaded to a secure cloud under a fake charity name. By evening, I called the only journalist I trusted, someone from my old MP days who'd covered veteran affairs with actual integrity. Jessica Chen answered on the 3rd ring. "Rachel Morgan, it's been what, 5 years?" 6. "Listen, I've got a story for you about corruption, evidence tampering, and a domestic violence cover-up that goes all the way to the district clerk's office." Silence for a beat. "You're serious?" "I'm giving you first access, exclusive, but you need to verify it fast and publish before they have time to spin it." We met at a coffee shop at dusk. I handed her the flash drive and a summary, names, dates, dollar amounts, everything laid out in a timeline that left no room for interpretation. She read the first page and looked up, eyes wide. "Holy hell." "Verify it, then publish every line. You realize this could ruin you too, right? They'll say you fabricated it out of revenge." "Good. It's about time someone did." That night, Emma sat next to me on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the streetlights flicker on one by one. "You look calm." "I'm not, I'm just focused." Focused on what? Finishing it. She was quiet for a long moment. What if he comes after us now? After this goes public? He already did. This time we're ready. The article hit the internet the next morning. Inside, Fairhaven's police scandal, bribes, false reports, and a domestic violence cover-up. Jessica had done her job well. Everything was there. Recordings, transcripts, photos of the contracts. By noon, it had over 50,000 views. By evening, news vans were parked outside the police department. Harlan resigned before dinner. Reed was taken in for questioning. And Marcus? He went dark. No statements, no appearances, no smug interviews. For the first time, silence worked in my favor. At home, Emma watched the news like she didn't dare believe it. They actually did something. Not enough yet, but it's a start. My phone buzzed. Ramirez. You did it! The whole city's talking. Internal Affairs is opening new cases on half the department. You're practically a folk hero. Let's not carve statues yet. She hesitated. There's something else. Marcus's lawyer just filed a counterclaim. Defamation and interference. He's trying to paint the article as fabricated, claiming you manipulated evidence out of personal revenge. Let him try. I've got his voice on tape. Yeah, but he's not fighting this alone. Guess who his new attorney is? My stomach sank. Who? Gregory Lang, Tommy Lang's parole lawyer. Of course. The past never stayed buried. It just hired representation. I closed the blinds, locked the door, and checked my gun again. Old habits. The system was bleeding, but not dead yet. I'd started this to protect my sister, but now it was bigger than that. The rot wasn't just one man. It was the whole machine. And machines only stop when you break them. The courthouse smelled like old paper and recycled air. Reporters swarmed the front steps, microphones thrust toward anyone in a suit. Emma and I slipped in through a side entrance, escorted by Ramirez, who'd traded her usual calm for something harder. The look of someone ready to swing if she had to. Marcus was already there, charcoal suit, fresh haircut, his lawyer at his side. Gregory Lang was exactly what I expected. Mid-50s, expensive watch, the kind of attorney who made his living defending people everyone knew were guilty. When Marcus saw me, he smiled. That same hollow grin. Captain Morgan, or should I say former captain, still playing detective. Still a captain until they sign the papers. Don't get ahead of yourself. Lang leaned in, whispering something to Marcus. They both looked at me, and I saw it. The calculation, the strategy. They weren't just defending against charges. They were preparing to attack. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Low ceiling, fluorescent lighting that buzzed faintly. Walls lined with wood that had absorbed decades of arguments and verdicts. The gallery was packed. Half local media, half townspeople who'd read the article and wanted to see if justice was real or just another story we tell ourselves. Judge Richardson presided. 62 years old, reputation for being fair but no nonsense. He'd replaced Judge Whitmore after she'd been quietly reassigned following the leaked emails. This hearing is to determine probable cause for charges of assault, bribery, and evidence tampering against Marcus Hart, Brian Reed, and John Harland. His voice cut through the murmur. Defense, prosecution, you'll keep it clean. I sat behind Jacobs, who looked more awake than anyone had a right to be at 9 a.m. She whispered without turning around. If the recordings hold, we've got them. Just stay quiet and let the facts speak. Easier said than done. The prosecution started with Ramirez, who described the internal audit that revealed Harlan's deleted files and suspicious bank transfers. Then Keller took the stand, sweating through his shirt, but steady enough. He walked the judge through the apartment building footage. Emma's escape, the timestamps, the breaker switch that proved premeditation. Then Jacobs played the audio recording. Harlan's voice, clear as glass. You'll get it when the case disappears. The words echoed through the courtroom. Reporters in the back scribbled fast. Marcus didn't flinch. He just leaned back, whispering something to Lang that made the lawyer nod. When it was the defense's turn, Lang stood, buttoned his jacket, and launched into full performance mode. Your Honor, this is a vendetta. My client's wife and her sister have conspired to destroy his reputation. They falsified recordings, illegally accessed private systems, and manipulated evidence. We have sworn testimony that paints a very different picture. He gestured toward Emma. Mrs. Hart has a documented history of emotional instability, multiple outbursts at her workplace, complaints from neighbors about domestic disturbances initiated by her. Jacobs shot to her feet. Objection, unsubstantiated character attack. Sustained, Richardson said, his tone sharp. Counselor, stick to the facts. Lang adjusted his tie, unruffled. Then let's discuss facts. We have witnesses prepared to testify that Mrs. Hart was seen striking my client on multiple occasions, that she threatened him with a kitchen knife, that former Captain Morgan, has been harassing my client for weeks, breaking into his property, accessing confidential business records. I clenched my jaw. It was a classic play: muddy the waters, confuse the jury, make everyone look equally guilty until nobody knew who to believe. Emma looked down at her hands, fingers twisting together. I wanted to stand up, to shout, to remind everyone she was the victim here. But Jacobs had told me to trust the process. And for once, I tried. Then they called Marcus to the stand. He moved like he was walking onto a stage, each step measured, practiced. When he settled into the witness chair, he looked directly at the judge with an expression of wounded dignity. I loved my wife, but she's been struggling for a while. She'd get upset, paranoid, think I was following her, spying on her. I tried to help, I really did. Jacobs leaned forward, chin in hand, watching like she was studying an insect under glass. Mr. Hart, are you denying that you made payments to Detective Harland and Mr. Reed? I am. Those payments were legitimate business expenses. Consulting fees for permit approvals and safety inspections, Consulting on what specifically? He hesitated just a fraction of a second. Permits, building codes, standard industry practice. Jacob smiled without humor. Safety inspections for a construction company that doesn't build in Fairhaven's jurisdiction. Interesting. Lang jumped in. Objection, badgering the witness. Withdrawn. Jacobs flipped to another page, casual. Let's talk about this recording. That's your voice, isn't it? Marcus paused, selling the uncertainty. No, it isn't. Sounds like someone spliced my voice into something else. You know how AI works these days. Anyone can fake anything. Jacobs hit play on another file, this one from Reed's office. Marcus's voice overlapped with Reed's. Their conversation caught mid-sentence. You promised I'd get half up front. Marcus froze. For the first time, the mask cracked. Jacobs didn't let up. Funny how the fake AI version of your voice uses the exact phrasing you just denied saying. The courtroom murmured. Richardson banged his gavel once. Quiet. Marcus tried to recover. That could be anyone. It's not admissible without proper verification. Jacobs pulled out a printed transcript, sliding it across to the judge. Text messages between Mr. Hart and Detective Harland, recovered under subpoena last week. She looked at Lang. Check your email. You were served. Lang's face went tight. He hadn't checked, or hadn't cared. Richardson glanced down at his notes. Objection overruled. I caught Marcus's eye then. He looked at me like he wanted to speak, but what came out wasn't anger. It was fear, the first real crack in his armor. Jacobs finished her questioning and sat down. The defense called no more witnesses. There was nothing left to spin. When the hearing adjourned for a short recess, I stepped outside with Emma. The courthouse steps were covered in reporters again, shouting questions, cameras flashing. She flinched, and I put a hand on her shoulder. You did good in there. I didn't say anything. Exactly. You didn't have to, She gave a tired smile, the kind that said she was running on empty but refusing to stop. Do you think he'll actually go to jail? He will one way or another. Inside, Jacobs walked past us, phone to her ear. Yes. Get the federal guys ready. Wire fraud, obstruction, witness intimidation. We're throwing the book at him. That was the first time in months I let myself breathe. Not relief, just oxygen. When court resumed, Richardson spoke for nearly 10 minutes, summarizing evidence and testimonies in that methodical way judges do when they want no one to question their reasoning. Finally, he looked up. This court finds sufficient probable cause for formal charges to proceed against Marcus Hart, Brian Reed, and John Harland. Bail is denied pending further investigation. Lang jumped to his feet. Your Honor, my client has no prior record. Sit down, counselor. Richardson's voice could have cut steel. Mr. Hart's influence ends here. The gavel hit once, sharp, final. Reporters erupted. Cameras flashed. Ramirez exhaled beside me, slow and controlled. Well, didn't think I'd live to see that. Emma didn't say a word. She just stood there, watching as deputies cuffed Marcus, his smirk gone, replaced by something hollow and lost. He looked back once, but I didn't look away. When we walked out of the courtroom, the air outside felt different. Not lighter, but clearer, like smoke had started to lift. People were still staring, whispering, but I didn't care. For the first time, truth wasn't just theory on paper, it was walking out those doors with us. The next hearing wasn't supposed to be dramatic, just procedural, more legal back and forth that no one but lawyers cared about. But nothing about this case had been normal. The courtroom packed again. Everyone wanted to see what would happen when Marcus realized his luck had finally run out. Richardson took the bench at 9 sharp. "We're here to review motions from the defense. Let's keep this efficient." Marcus sat at the defendant's table, wrists free for now, posture perfect, every inch the model citizen, pretending not to be cornered. Lang stood beside him, looking like he'd been flown in to fight a murder charge and had no idea he'd walked into a small-town disaster with cameras. Jacobs began by filing for federal jurisdiction. "Given the cross-state nature of the financial transfers and evidence tampering, we believe this case exceeds local authority." Lang objected immediately. "This is nothing more than a media stunt. My client has already been tried in the court of public opinion. He's a respected businessman, not some criminal mastermind." Jacob smiled like a cat about to dismantle a mouse. Respected businessman who bribed a detective, intimidated witnesses, and deleted police evidence. "You're right. Sounds nothing like a criminal." Richardson cleared his throat. "Miss Jacobs, stick to the facts." "Oh, I am, Your Honor." She turned to the screen behind her. "Permission to play Exhibit 24. The screen flickered to life, the apartment building video, Marcus dragging Emma into the hallway, the lights cutting out, her running for the exit, blood on her shoulder. The room went still. Even the cameras stopped clicking. Jacobs let it run, then paused. "For months, Mr. Hart told this court my client attacked him. He said he acted in self-defense. But this footage, combined with the 911 call and the audio recovered from Detective Harlan's device, shows the opposite. Mr. Hart was the aggressor, the planner, and the liar." Lang stood. "This video. There's no verified chain of custody." "Actually," Jacobs interrupted, "it was recovered directly from the building's backup system by Officer Keller under court order, time-stamped and certified by the DA's office 2 days ago. You'd know that if you'd read your own discovery packet." A low murmur spread through the courtroom. Lang sat down, face red. Marcus's expression hardened. He stared straight ahead, jaw locked, eyes fixed somewhere past the judge's bench. Jacobs clicked to the next slide. Bank records, line after line of transactions. "And these show payments from Hart Construction to Lang & Associates, an entity owned by Tommy Lang, brother to the defendant's mother's side. Payments totaling over $500,000 since 2018. All marked as consulting, all routed through ghost accounts." Richardson leaned forward. "Counselor, are you alleging the defendant conspired with a convicted felon currently serving time for armed robbery?" "Yes, Your Honor. The evidence suggests a coordinated effort to target my client's family for personal and financial revenge. A vendetta that began 15 years ago and nearly ended with my client's sister in a morgue." You could feel the shift in the room then. That silent collective realization that the story everyone thought they knew wasn't the real one. Lang tried to recover. "These are coincidences, Your Honor. Business dealings, not conspiracies. The alleged victim's sister is a former military officer with a, let's be honest, questionable disciplinary record. This entire investigation has been compromised by her personal vendetta." That got my attention. I leaned toward Jacobs and muttered, "He's going for character assassination." "Classic," she whispered back. "And weak." She stood. "Then let's address that. I'd like to call Captain Rachel Morgan to the stand." I hadn't planned to testify that day, but she didn't ask for volunteers. The bailiff swore me in. Jacobs walked me through the basics. Service record, commendations, 20 years without a single disciplinary action. Then she shifted gears. "Captain Morgan, what was your involvement in this case?" I responded to a call from my sister, Emma Morgan Hart, who reported being assaulted by her husband. When I arrived at the Fairhaven Police Department, she was detained, bruised, and treated as the aggressor. And what happened after that? I discovered that Detective Harland had suppressed audio evidence, deleted her 911 call, and accepted money from the defendant to falsify reports. Lang shot up. "Objection, speculation." Jacobs didn't miss a beat. "Withdrawn. Captain, what did you personally witness?" "I witnessed corruption, plain and simple." Lang tried again, voice dripping condescension. "Captain Morgan, isn't it true you were suspended from your position for misconduct related to this case? Administrative leave, not suspension. And I wasn't disciplined. I was told to stay out of the way." "And yet here you are, leading a crusade. Maybe you're not here for justice. Maybe you're here for payback." I met his eyes, voice steady. If holding people accountable is payback, then yeah, I'm here for that. A few people in the gallery clapped before Richardson banged his gavel for silence. Jacobs nodded. No further questions. When I stepped down, Lang called his final witness, a psychologist named Dr. Eleanor Price. She testified that Emma exhibited patterns of emotional volatility consistent with trauma-induced memory distortion. It was the same tired tactic: blame the victim's brain. Jacobs destroyed her in 5 minutes flat. Doctor, are you being paid by the defense? Yes, as an expert witness. Yeah. How much? $200 an hour. So your diagnosis depends on who's signing the check. The courtroom laughed. Dr. Price shrank in her seat. By the time closing arguments began, the air felt combustible. Jacobs ended hers with a line that would stick with me forever. Justice doesn't fail because of bad laws. It fails because of people who choose convenience over courage. Let today show that Fairhaven isn't that kind of place. When Richardson recessed for deliberation, everyone exhaled at once. Marcus stood, whispering something harsh to Lang. Then, out of nowhere, he slammed his hand on the table. You think this is over? You think she wins? Two deputies moved fast. But he wasn't aiming for me or Emma. He was aiming for Jacobs. She ducked just as he lunged, grabbing the table edge to steady herself. Ramirez was faster. She tackled him before he made it 2 steps, pinning him to the floor with the efficiency of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. Order! Order! Richardson pounded his gavel. Ramirez cuffed Marcus with a sharp click and hauled him upright. He glared at me, face twisted, eyes bloodshot. You ruined my life. I looked at him evenly. No, you did that yourself. He tried to lunge again, but the deputies dragged him out through the side door. The crowd buzzed like a hive disturbed. Reporters were already rushing outside to call their editors. Jacob straightened her jacket, unshaken. Guess that answers any remaining questions about his temperament. Richardson sighed. Mr. Hart just made my decision very easy. He didn't need to say more. Everyone in that room knew what was coming next. I glanced at Emma, who sat perfectly still, eyes glassy, hands clenched together. For the first time in months, I saw something in her face I hadn't seen before. Not fear, relief. The verdict came faster than anyone expected. Maybe it was because the evidence was airtight, or maybe Richardson had seen enough of Marcus's tantrums to make up his mind days ago. Either way, the courtroom filled up again like a theater on opening night. No one wanted to miss the final act. Marcus sat in the defendant's chair, wrists cuffed this time, a deputy stationed on either side. He looked smaller now, like someone had deflated the ego right out of him. Emma sat beside me, hands clasped tight in her lap. The bruise on her wrist had faded, but the scar underneath hadn't. Neither had the memory. Richardson adjusted his glasses and began reading the ruling in that steady, no-nonsense tone of his. After reviewing all presented evidence, witness statements, and the defendant's conduct in this courtroom, this court finds Marcus Hart guilty of aggravated assault, evidence tampering, bribery, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Richardson continued without flinching. Given the severity of these offenses and the demonstrated pattern of manipulation and violence, this court sentences the defendant to 20 years in state prison, without the possibility of parole for 12. Marcus's head snapped up, the words hitting him like a physical blow. 20 years? You can't... The gavel came down hard. You've had your say, Mr. Hart. Now you'll have your silence. It was over, just like that. Months of fear, tension, and lies cut down in a few sentences. But victory didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like oxygen after drowning. Reporters were shouting questions before we even stood up. Cameras flashed, microphones waved, and Emma flinched with every pop. Ramirez blocked the aisle like a human shield, pushing through the chaos. Let them eat headlines, she muttered. You two walk tall. Outside, the air smelled like rain and asphalt. Clouds rolled low over the courthouse, dark and heavy, like even the sky needed a minute to process what had just happened. Emma stopped on the steps, staring at the wet pavement. It's really done, isn't it? Yeah, it's done. She exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding her breath since the night everything started. You think he'll appeal? Probably. Guys like him don't quit until there's nothing left to break. She nodded, then looked at me, really looked at me. Then we'll still be okay? I saw it then. The bruises, the fear, the quiet strength underneath it all. We already are. Inside, Jacobs was giving a press statement. Reporters circling like sharks with pens. This isn't just about one case, it's about accountability, about making sure every officer, every official, every man who hides behind power understands that lies don't stay buried. Her words carried, and for once, I saw people listening. Later that afternoon, we went straight to the district attorney's office. The DA had called us in for something important, her voice unreadable on the phone. When we walked in, Jacobs and Ramirez were already waiting, along with a woman in a crisp navy suit. She stood, offering her hand. "Captain Morgan, Mrs. Hart, I'm Deputy Director Helen Norris, representing the Department of Defense Civil Affairs Division. We've been following your case closely." That set off every red flag I had. Why would the DoD care about a small-town domestic violence case? Norris smiled faintly. Because it's not small anymore. Your exposure of the bribery network between law enforcement and corporate contractors has national implications. We're coordinating with federal investigators to expand the probe, and we'd like your help. Emma blinked. You're serious? Very. You're still officially on leave, Captain, not discharged. We'd like to reinstate you as liaison to our task force. You'd oversee veteran outreach and internal ethics audits. Your insight into both systems, military and civilian, makes you uniquely qualified. Ramirez raised an eyebrow. Guess that's one way to apologize for benching you? Norris ignored her. You'd have full authority, resources, and protection. We want to make sure what happened here doesn't happen to other families. I didn't answer right away. Emma looked at me, silent, waiting. For months, everything had been reaction, survival. The idea of stepping back into uniform, but this time on my own terms, felt right. I'll do it, but only if Fairhaven gets its own reform plan. Training, oversight, and a new review board for domestic violence cases. I want it written into the deal. Norris nodded once. Done. After she left, Ramirez leaned back in her chair. You really just negotiated with the Pentagon like it was a PTA meeting. Jacobs grinned. I was going to offer her coffee. Glad I didn't. Emma smiled for the first time all day. You're really going back to work? Not the same kind of work. This time it's about fixing the system that failed us. That evening, the Fairhaven City Council held an emergency session. Live broadcast, standing room only. They voted unanimously to adopt what Jacobs called the Monroe Protocol, mandatory evidence retention, anonymous complaint options, and training reforms for all officers responding to domestic calls. When the mayor announced it, people actually clapped. Real applause, not polite. It wasn't loud, but it was enough. Back home, Emma brewed tea while I stood by the window, watching rain slide down the glass. Feels weird, she whispered. Winning justice always feels weird. It doesn't erase what happened, it just stops it from getting worse. She leaned on the counter. You think people will actually change? Some will, some won't. But the rules just did, and that's a start. She nodded, then her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated before answering. Hello? Her face went pale. She handed it to me. A voice came through the speaker, rough and familiar. Officer Carter from County Corrections. Captain Morgan, thought you should know. Marcus Hart's transfer convoy was attacked en route to state prison. 3 injured, 1 dead. He's missing. Emma's mug slipped from her hands, shattering on the floor. I didn't move for a second, processing the words. When? An hour ago. Highway 19 north of Ashfield. We're running a manhunt. You'll be briefed if we find anything. The line went dead. The house went silent except for the sound of rain against the roof. Emma whispered. He's out there. I checked my sidearm, the motion automatic. He won't get far. Ramirez called within minutes. You heard? Yeah, I'm heading to the scene now. We'll keep you updated. Don't keep me out of this. You're not on duty? I am now. I grabbed my jacket and keys. Emma caught my arm. Rachel, don't. Please let them handle it. I met her eyes. He's already tried once. I'm not giving him a second chance. She didn't argue again, just nodded, lips trembling. Be careful. The highway stretched dark and wet under the storm. Police lights flashed up ahead, red and blue cutting through the rain. I pulled up beside Ramirez's cruiser. She was standing by the wrecked transport van, doors blown open, 1 tire shredded. What do we have? Ambush, 2 shooters, 1 inside job. The guards say Hart had help, maybe from someone higher up. We're checking traffic cam... but the storm's killing visibility. I looked down at the mud beside the guardrail. Fresh footprints, heavy boots, heading toward the woods. Looks like he went on foot. Ramirez followed my gaze. If he's stupid enough to come back here, we'll find him. He's not coming back for them. He's coming back for us. The rain kept falling, hard and relentless, washing away everything except the one truth I'd learned too well. Justice might be written in the courtroom, but revenge always finishes its business in the dark. By dawn, the rain had stopped, leaving the woods wrapped in fog thick enough to mute the sirens. Search teams combed the area for hours. Ramirez coordinated units over the radio while I followed the trail through the mud. Every step brought back training I hadn't used since deployment. Tracking, anticipating, thinking like the hunted. The prints cut through a shallow creek, then up a ridge behind an abandoned quarry. The air smelled of wet stone and diesel. When I crested the hill, I saw him. Marcus was sitting against a boulder, soaked, bruised, one hand clutching a pistol that had clearly seen better days. His cuffs were still hanging from one wrist. The chain snapped. For a second, we just stared at each other through the fog. "You never should have come here." He laughed weakly. "Neither should you. You could have just left it alone, Rachel, moved on. But no, you had to be the hero. You call this heroism? You hurt people who trusted you. You destroyed your own life." The way he said it wasn't angry. It was hollow. The fight was gone, but the poison wasn't. I kept my voice even. "Put it down, it's over." He looked out toward the highway, blinking against the gray light. "Over for you, maybe. For me, it never was. You took everything from my family when you arrested Tommy. You think I forgot? I did my job. Tommy made his choices, so did you." He smirked faintly. "And what now? You kill me here, say I went for the gun tied up with a bow?" I shook my head. "You're not worth the paperwork." For a moment, he seemed to believe me. Then his face twisted. He turned the gun, not toward me, but toward himself. I lunged, grabbing his wrist just as the shot fired. The bullet tore through the dirt, grazing his shoulder. He screamed, struggling, but his strength was gone. I disarmed him, tossed the weapon aside, and held pressure on the wound while calling it in. By the time Ramirez and the medics arrived, he was fading fast. "Pressure's good, he'll live." Ramirez crouched beside me, glancing at the scene. "You sure that's what you want?" I looked at him, face pale, lips blue from shock. "Yeah, I want him to face what he did every day." Marcus was cuffed to the stretcher and loaded into the ambulance, sirens blaring as it disappeared down the road. I stood there for a long time, listening until the sound faded. Then, for the first time in years, I let the silence sit. Weeks passed. The official report read, "Escaped inmate recaptured after brief pursuit. Non-fatal injury sustained during arrest. Clean, simple, safe." It didn't mention the look on his face when he realized his war was finally done. Emma and I rebuilt what normal looked like. Slowly, unevenly. She started therapy twice a week, not because someone told her to, but because she wanted to understand herself again. Some mornings, she'd wake up shaking from nightmares. Other days, she'd hum while making coffee, like she used to when we were kids. Healing never came in straight lines. It came in fragments that stitched themselves together when no one was looking. Barbara moved back to town, renting a small apartment 2 miles from my house. The three of us had dinner once a week. Awkward at first, but familiar in that way families survive storms by pretending the roof never leaked as long as everyone stayed dry. One evening, midway through pasta and small talk, Barbara set down her fork. "I need to say something." Emma and I exchanged glances. I was wrong. About everything. I should have believed you, Emma. And Rachel. I should have trusted that you knew what you were doing. Her voice cracked. I let appearances matter more than my daughters. I'm sorry. Emma reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "You're here now, that's what matters." Barbara looked at me, eyes wet. "I underestimated you because of your age, because I thought retired meant finished. But you showed me that wisdom doesn't fade, it just gets sharper." I nodded, throat tight. "We're family. We figure it out." Fairhaven changed too. The Monroe Protocol went national within months. Federal grants poured in for training programs and trauma response units. Ramirez led one of the pilot sessions, and Keller, of all people, became an instructor. "Turns out I'm good at teaching rookies what not to do," he joked during one of our coffee meetings. As for me, I took the job Norris offered, Civil Affairs Division, Domestic Ethics Task Force. It wasn't glamorous, but it mattered. My office was small, my badge different, but for the first time I didn't need a weapon to feel effective. One afternoon, a year to the day since the trial, Emma and I drove to the courthouse steps. The city had just unveiled a plaque dedicated to victims of domestic violence who spoke up, survived, and changed policy. It wasn't fancy, just brushed steel with etched names. One of them hers, She stood there, fingers tracing her own name, expression unreadable. Feels weird. Yeah, recognition always does. She smiled faintly. Do you think he knows? Maybe, but it doesn't matter. She nodded, then turned toward the street where the city hummed on like nothing had ever happened. Later that summer, I got a letter. No return address, but the handwriting was careful, deliberate. Captain Morgan, you don't know me, but my sister does. She's one of the women who called your hotline, said you picked up yourself. She's safe now. We both are. Whatever it is you're doing, keep doing it. A brother who finally understands what protection means. I folded it carefully and placed it in my desk drawer next to a small keychain Emma had given me on my birthday, engraved with 3 words, "We don't break." That night, Ramirez came over with pizza and a bottle of wine. You hear? She asked between bites. Carter's joining the state task force. Says you inspired him. Guess the kid finally found his backbone. And you? You ever going to take a break? She grinned. Maybe when the world stops needing one of us to fix it. She raised her glass. So never. We laughed. It felt good to laugh without guilt attached. When she left, I stepped onto the porch. The sky was clear, the air crisp. Across the yard, the maple tree we'd planted after the trial had grown taller than the roofline. Its leaves fluttered in the evening breeze, and for a moment, the world didn't feel so heavy. Emma joined me outside, barefoot, mug of tea in hand. You know, I thought about changing my last name again, but I think I'll keep it. Make it mean something better. It already does. She smiled. You really believe that? I nodded. I believe in what you survived, in what we built after. She leaned against the railing, looking out into the dark. You ever wonder what happens to people like him after prison? Not anymore. His name will fade. Yours won't. The porch light flickered, catching the edge of the keychain in my pocket. It clinked softly against my belt. Steady, grounding, real. Across town, the courthouse clock struck 10. I could hear it faintly through the night air, each chime rolling across the rooftops like a reminder. Justice isn't loud. It's consistent. Emma turned to me. Do you think we'll ever be completely okay? I looked at her, saw the calm in her face, the strength that had replaced the fear. We already are. Inside, the radio hummed softly. A local news story about new reforms spreading statewide. They called it the Monroe Standard. I didn't correct them. It didn't belong to me anymore. It belonged to every voice that had been dismissed, every survivor who'd ever been told to calm down. I closed the door behind us, warm light spilling across the floor. Outside, the wind carried the faint sound of distant traffic, a world moving on, and for once that was okay. 3 months later, I sat in my new office at the Civil Affairs headquarters in Charlotte. The space was modest, a desk, 2 chairs, a window overlooking the parking lot. But it was mine, earned through 20 years of service and a fight I never thought I'd have to wage. Keller stopped by that morning, no longer the nervous rookie who'd questioned my authority. He'd grown into his role, confidence replacing doubt. Captain, got a case you might want to see. Domestic violence situation in Greensboro. Local PD's stonewalling the victim, similar pattern to what we saw with Marcus. I took the file, scanning the details. A woman named Sarah Chen, 34, reporting escalating abuse. Her husband worked for the city council. The responding officers had marked her as hysterical, dismissed her injuries as self-inflicted. When did this come in? Last night. She called our hotline after seeing the Monroe Protocol coverage. I stood, grabbing my jacket. Let's go. The drive to Greensboro took 90 minutes. Keller filled me in on the details, the husband's connections, the department's reluctance to pursue charges, the medical examiner who'd conveniently lost the injury photographs. When we arrived at the local precinct, the desk sergeant looked up with barely concealed annoyance. Can I help you? I showed my credentials. Captain Rachel Morgan, DOD Civil Affairs, I'm here about the Sarah Chen case. His expression shifted, recognition flickering. That's an ongoing investigation. Not anymore. It's federal now. I'll need access to all case files, officer statements, and evidence logs within the hour. He hesitated, then reached for the phone. I'll need to clear this with... You don't. Check your email. Authorization came through this morning. He did. His face went tight. Conference room's down the hall. Keller and I spent 3 hours reviewing the case. Every page confirmed what I already knew. Another system protecting the powerful. Another woman being told she was the problem. By evening, we had enough to force the department's hand. Criminal charges filed, evidence secured. Sarah Chen moved to a safe location with legal representation. As we drove back, Keller glanced over. How many of these do you think are out there? Cases like this, buried by departments who don't want the hassle. More than we'll ever find. But everyone we do matters. You ever get tired of it, the fight? I watch the highway lights streak past, every day. But then I remember what it felt like when no one believed Emma. When they looked at her injuries and saw inconvenience instead of evidence. As long as that keeps happening, I can't stop. He nodded, quiet for a moment. For what it's worth, you changed my mind about a lot of things. About age, experience, what real strength looks like. You changed yours. I just gave you permission to trust your instincts. We drove in comfortable silence after that, the kind that comes from shared purpose. Back home, Emma had dinner waiting. Nothing fancy, just grilled chicken and vegetables. But the gesture mattered. How was Greensboro? Progress. Slow but real. She set down her glass. I've been thinking about going back to school, getting a degree in social work, maybe helping people like me who don't know where to turn. You'd be good at that. Yeah? You survived the worst and chose not to let it define you. That's exactly who people need in their corner. She smiled, the kind that reached her eyes. I learned from the best. Later, after Emma went to bed, I sat on the porch with my laptop, reviewing the day's notes. An email notification popped up. Message from Deputy Director Norris. Captain Morgan, excellent work in Greensboro. The department there is cooperating fully, and Mrs. Chen has expressed gratitude for your intervention. We've received 17 new referrals this week alone, all citing the Monroe Protocol as their reason for coming forward. Your work is making a difference. Keep it up. H. Norris. I closed the laptop, staring out at the quiet street. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. A car passed, headlights sweeping across the lawn. This was the life I'd built from the wreckage. Not perfect, not without scars, but mine. The phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. This is Captain Morgan? A woman's voice hesitant. I got your number from the hotline. My name is Jennifer. My boyfriend, I don't know if this is worth your time, but it is. Tell me what's happening. She did. 20 minutes of fear spilling out in fragments. The escalation, the isolation, the feeling that no one would believe her because he was charming, successful, loved by everyone who didn't live with him. I listened. I took notes. I gave her the numbers she needed. Safe houses, legal aid, victim advocates who understood. You're not alone, I told her. And you're not crazy. What you're experiencing is real, and there are people who will help you. Even if I'm not sure I can leave yet? Even then, take your time. But know that when you're ready, we'll be here. She thanked me, voice breaking. When she hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time, feeling the weight of it. Not just her story, but all of them. The women who called at midnight, terrified and hopeful in equal measure. The ones who didn't call at all because they'd been told too many times that their pain didn't matter. I couldn't save them all, but I could try. That had to be enough. The weeks blurred into months. More cases, more fights with departments who wanted to protect reputations instead of victims. But slowly, the tide was turning. The Monroe Protocol became standard practice in 43 states. Training programs launched nationwide. Victim advocacy groups cited our work as proof that change was possible. Emma graduated with her degree in social work and took a position with a nonprofit specializing in domestic violence prevention. She was good at it, better than good. Survivors trusted her because she'd been where they were and come out the other side. One evening, we attended a fundraiser for the organization. Barbara came too, proud in a way she'd never been before. Not because of achievements or appearances, but because her daughters had turned pain into purpose. During the event, a young woman approached me, maybe 25, eyes nervous. You're Captain Morgan, right? I am. I just wanted to say thank you. Your protocol saved my life. My ex was a cop, and no one would listen to me until I mentioned the Monroe Standard. They had to take me seriously then. She showed me a photo on her phone, her with a little girl, maybe 3 years old, both smiling. This is my daughter. She's growing up in a safe home because of what you did. I didn't know what to say. Emma squeezed my hand. That's what it's all about, she whispered, one person at a time. The woman hugged me before leaving, and I stood there feeling the weight of it, not burden, but responsibility. The knowledge that what we'd built mattered beyond ourselves. Later, standing outside under string lights, Emma turned to me. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't come that night? If you'd been deployed somewhere or just not answered the phone? Every day. What do you think would have happened to me? I looked at her, seeing not the broken woman from that holding cell, but the survivor who'd rebuilt herself piece by piece. I think you would have found a way. Maybe not the same way, but you're stronger than you know. She shook her head. I don't think I am, but I learned how to be from watching you. Barbara joined us, linking arms with both of us. My girls, she said softly, I'm so proud of who you've become. We stood there together, 3 generations of women who'd learned the hard way that strength isn't about never breaking. It's about how you rebuild. The night air carried the sound of music from inside, laughter mixing with conversation. For a moment, everything felt right, not perfect, but right. But Emma looked up at the stars. You know what I realized? Marcus took a lot from me, time, trust, peace of mind, but he couldn't take the most important thing. What's that? The ability to choose who I become after. That's mine. Always was. I smiled. Always will be. We stayed until the fundraiser ended, then drove home through quiet streets. The radio played softly, some old song about resilience and second chances. When we pulled into the driveway, Emma didn't move right away. Rachel? Yeah? Thank you for not giving up, for fighting when I couldn't. You were fighting the whole time. I just helped carry the weight. She hugged me, fierce and sudden. We did it, didn't we? We actually did it. We did. Inside, the house was warm. I made tea while Emma sorted through mail. The routine felt good. Ordinary, safe, earned. My phone buzzed. Text from Ramirez. Turn on Channel 7. I did. The news anchor was discussing a new federal initiative to standardize domestic violence response protocols across all 50 states. The screen showed footage of the Monroe Protocol training session. Officers learning how to properly document injuries, collect evidence, treat victims with dignity. The anchor's voice carried through the room. This groundbreaking reform, inspired by a case in Fairhaven, North Carolina, is changing how law enforcement handles domestic violence nationwide. Captain Rachel Morgan, the retired military police officer who exposed corruption in her sister's case, declined to comment for this story, but sources say she continues to work with federal agencies to expand these protections. Emma appeared in the doorway. You're famous. I'm tired, she laughed. Fair. We watched the rest of the segment together, then I turned off the TV. The house felt quiet again, peaceful. Tomorrow there would be more cases, more fights, more women who needed someone to believe them. But tonight, I could rest. I'd spent 20 years proving myself, another 6 months fighting a system designed to silence people like Emma. And now I was spending my second act making sure others didn't have to fight as hard. It wasn't the career I'd imagined, but it was the one I'd earned. And that made all the difference.